Okay, so welcome to today's episode of Kescast.
Thank you.
And yeah, today we're talking with Owen, who's made his own app for helping people improve vocabulary.
Yep. So it's called Learn Words Vocabulary Builder, and it's a free to download app. And how it works is, it'll give you a word, and you'll need to then pick the word that's a synonym for that word. And then once you've done that, it'll tell you if you're right, if you're wrong, and then it'll give you a definition so you can get a full explanation of the word and an example. So because it's important to put it into context. Otherwise, you've got no idea how to use it.
Yeah.
And you can track your progress as you go, so you can kind of see how you build up your vocabulary. And the idea basically is to increase vocabulary through the repetition of words, basically.
Okay, well, that's great. So why did you choose, why should people learn vocabulary and improve their vocabulary through an app? Like, why did you think this was a good idea?
Well, it was in a study in 2000, it was kind of concluded that indirect and direct methods for improving vocabulary are actually, they're best combined together. And basically, the app is a direct method, so you're actually consciously trying to improve your vocabulary. And it basically works efficiently to both do that, but also work with the indirect methods, because if you haven't seen the word before, you're going to be able to pick it up, and then when you read or hear something with that word, you'll then be able to understand it, basically. And the app essentially takes up the stage of having to infer the meaning, which can take quite a lot of times of seeing a word to actually eventually have a solid understanding. So it basically cuts out a lot of that inference stage, kind of. And if someone has seen the word before, they may not have looked it up and just inferred the meaning. They might not have a very good solid understanding of it. And basically the active repetition of doing the vocabulary will strengthen the understanding of the words.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So the app sort of works alongside your normal reading and your normal learning
exactly.
to sort of speed up and improve.
Yeah, and it's also
learning.
like I said, it puts it into context, so you can you still get within the app without having to read a good understanding of how it interacts in sentences. And also in the app there's more student-friendly definitions, because it's also been shown by research that the problem is that a lot of dictionary definitions are just too complicated for students learning new words. So what I've tried to do in the app is just still give the full meaning, but just simplify it down so it's easy to remember and easy to learn, basically.
Yeah, that's great. So you're not going around in circles going, okay, but what does that word mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because that could be annoying. You see a definition and look up definition for a word in that.
And you get a bit discouraged.
Yeah, it could be quite a lengthy process. Yeah.
So that's great. So kind of similar, but I guess where did you get this idea, and what made you decide to make this app?
Well, I think, fundamentally, vocab is very important, because, everyone's had it. There's situations where there's a perfect word to describe something, but you just can't think of it, and it can be really annoying.
Yeah.
But also, it allows effective communication, and you can comprehend things a lot better. And where I got the idea from was seeing it in things like the 11 plus. They'll give you a word, and then you've got to actually pick the correct synonym or antonym sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's also on other exams, like learning English as a second language and SATs tests and that kind of thing. But also because I think for GCSE English particularly, vocab is a huge factor in marks. It can boost your marks massively in improving your vocab. So, and also there's a gap in the market for vocabulary building apps, because it's very hard nowadays with over 2 million apps on the App Store to actually get downloads. But the education sector of it, is a lot more. It's less competitive, basically.
Yeah.
In a sense, and relatively, and also for me personally, making apps, it's been a good experience of making a content-based app.
Yeah.
Where the code isn't quite as complicated, but it's more. So I've been able to make two apps now. One seeing the side where it's content heavy,
Yeah.
the other where it's programming heavy, basically.
Oh, that's great.
So
Yeah. And I think that probably does make a difference actually with you being, you're in high school, you'll be doing GCSEs soon enough, you've done 11 plus.
Yeah.
It's quite nice, I think, for you to make that app for other people like you,
Yes,
rather
that's
than adults who maybe have forgotten some.
That's it.
Of
That is the
that
advantage
level.
of doing it now. I mean, not only can I use it myself, but I can kind of see I'm at the stage where, like you say, it's all fresh in my mind. How best to lay it out and everything, kind
Yeah.
of, because when you've got big companies doing it, sometimes don't consider everything that will be useful for the certain target age group.
Yes,
Yeah.
whereas you can see it around you,
Yeah,
what people
exactly,
need.
yeah.
And So what makes your app different to those other similar apps that are there?
Yeah, so first of all, providing examples, it's a lot of apps don't provide examples because it's quite a lengthy process creating new definitions and examples, because you can't because of copyright, you can't just copy them off the internet, and so actually thinking of them it's a job that's done by professors and stuff, writing dictionary definitions and examples. So it's actually quite a hard task, but I think it's important, although it means there's less words in the app, it's important because people need context. Otherwise, it's all very well knowing the definition, but if you don't know how to use it, there's not really much point knowing the words. And then also, some will provide vague definitions as well because of the lengthy process of writing definitions and examples. Because, but the thing is with that is they don't portray the full meaning of the words. So they might just use a synonym as a definition,
Right.
but if the word just meant the same thing, I mean, some words do mean the same thing, but if it did mean exactly the same thing, then there wouldn't be any point using it really.
In having
much.
two different words.
Yeah, exactly.
So there has to be something which means you would use
even
one
if just a
rather
little
than the other.
subtlety, I mean, it's important to kind of know the full picture of the word, basically.
Yeah, that's great. So we've touched on it a little bit, but to go into it a bit more, why is vocabulary and a good vocabulary so important?
Well, mainly it's just because you need this effective communication in jobs, in the workplace. If you can communicate more effectively, it's a good, when writing emails or anything in the job place, it's really important, because if you don't communicate effectively, then it's going to be a barrier to doing your job properly, really. And also just for, as well, in just like I said, GCSE English, things like that, you need to know a good vocabulary to be able to get the higher marks, like grades 8 and 9, because otherwise you got to set yourself apart from, if everyone knows the same content, because that's what it is nowadays, because there's so many because the internet's just, it all circulates and the best stuff's picked. You need to know to separate yourself from the people grade 7s to get grade 9. You need to actually know vocabulary so you can more coherently and more persuasively put forward your point, basically.
Yeah. So it's sort of having a good vocabulary, in general, just sort of opens up a lot more to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're not, you can kind of grow up like in a family or a certain background, and you'll have a very specific like vocabulary or something like that. Whereas if you're learning more, you can interact with more people and more environments. And
that's it. And also another interesting thing is, studies have actually shown that people in poverty often have disadvantaged vocabularies, and so I think the app is free, basically, and that's a good thing because people have access to it, and that's also why I want to try and get it out on Android as well, because this idea of universal access, it's going to be able to allow to reach the global market instead of just roughly half of people or even less. And I think artificially improving, because it's research shows that people in poverty, they're not exposed to the vocabulary at home, because that's where at home is where particularly people develop most of their vocabulary, and so being able to actively repeat it on an app, kind of can make up for that as well.
Yeah.
And close the gap basically
Yeah.
between poverty and perhaps less developed vocabulary.
Yeah, you can sort of simulate environments that
Yeah,
they would
exactly.
otherwise not have access to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's really great. Yeah, touching on something we sort of mentioned earlier, do you think this app could be useful for people who are learning English as a second language?
Yeah, that is something I've definitely thought about. Now, I suppose the way I wrote the app in the first place was so that the options, so there's synonym and there's three other options which aren't related to the words,
Okay.
and I've made them simple so for people who have English as their first language, they don't have to go and look up the options
Yeah.
because that would kind of defeat the purpose.
Yes.
Because then they're just going to be going around in circles. But so I think, yeah, definitely for people who are kind of have got a reasonably developed proficiency of English as a second language, they would be able to use this app because, the word choice, the options are simple, but the actual words themselves are more complicated. So I think, yeah, and it's something I'm going to look into, sort of targeting a wider market. And I have had some downloads from other countries, but I'm
Okay.
actively been targeting,
Yeah.
to countries like
English
that.
speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Great. Yeah. So, is there anything else you sort of want to say before we wrap it
Well,
up?
I'm going to be making an Android version, and I'm hoping to get this out before the end of the summer. And I'm also going to be working on more words as well.
Oh, great.
And just kind of taking the app further and sort of playing around with it, seeing how I can develop it, and just improving it generally.
Just constantly adding to it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's absolutely great.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, thanks for coming and talking about it a bit.
Thank you.
Sounds really interesting, and hopefully I'll be able to download it
Yeah.
soon enough.
Hopefully, yeah.
It's great, and good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.